People often misunderstand INFJs because they are complex yet appear simple, warm yet distant, empathetic yet withdrawn, mysterious yet transparent in their compassion. This duality creates misconceptions that stick to them like labels, but rarely reflect the reality of who they truly are. One of the most common things people get wrong about INFJs is assuming they are extroverted simply because they can be highly engaging when they choose to be. An INFJ at a gathering may seem charismatic, attentive, and deeply invested in the people around them. Yet, what outsiders fail to see is the cost of that energy. They are not naturally sustained by social interactions. They're drained by them. When they retreat, people often assume they're being cold, disinterested, or aloof, but in reality, the INFJ is simply recharging from emotional saturation. Another misconception is that INFJs are fragile or overly sensitive. Because they are attuned to emotions and quick to notice subtle shifts in tone or body language, many people confuse this with weakness. The truth is quite the opposite. INFJs possess a deep emotional resilience that allows them to absorb the struggles of others while continuing to move forward with determination. Their sensitivity is not a flaw. It's a strength that enables them to understand people at depths others cannot. Yet, because they process pain inwardly, and often in silence, outsiders underestimate just how much they endure and how strong they actually are. If you want to truly understand yourself and unlock your full potential as an INFJ, check out the INFJ Playbook today. The link is in the description of this video. There is also the idea that INFJs are open books because they are often great listeners and seem to connect effortlessly on a personal level. People spill secrets to them, share vulnerabilities, and feel as though they've known the INFJ forever. But what many don't realize is that this dynamic is usually one-sided. INFJs can make others feel seen and understood without ever revealing their own inner world. Their empathy creates intimacy, but that doesn't mean they are equally transparent. In fact, their core self is guarded, layered, and revealed only to the rare few who have earned their trust. People mistake their ability to connect with a willingness to be known, which is rarely the case. Another misconception is that INFJs are idealists with their heads lost in the clouds. While it is true that INFJs dream vividly and hold on to big-picture visions for themselves and the world, they are also highly pragmatic when they need to be. Their idealism doesn't mean they are naive. Instead, it often comes paired with a grounded understanding of reality. They know change takes time, that people are flawed, and that life isn't perfect. Their so-called idealism is less about being unrealistic and more about holding on to hope in a world that often feels dark and fragmented. It is what gives them the perseverance to guide, create, and heal where others might give up. People also get it wrong when they assume INFJs are always calm, patient, and endlessly forgiving. While they may be tolerant for a long time, and while they prefer harmony over conflict, INFJs have firm boundaries that, once crossed repeatedly, result in a sudden and irreversible distance. This is where the infamous INFJ door slam comes from, a behavior often misinterpreted as cold-hearted or vengeful. In truth, it is an act of self-preservation. Because INFJs give so much of themselves in relationships, once they realize the connection is damaging, exploitative, or unbalanced, they cut it off completely to protect their inner peace. Outsiders often don't see the months or years of patience, forgiveness, and attempts at resolution that preceded the decision. They only see the silence that follows and label it as cruelty, not understanding that the INFJ is protecting a soul already stretched thin. People also assume that INFJs can easily be manipulated because of their empathy. People sometimes assume that if you appeal to their emotions, you can get what you want. But INFJs are far from naive in this regard. Their intuitive ability to read between the lines often makes them see through manipulation before the other person even realizes they're doing it. They may play along for a while, especially if they're trying to understand the other person's motives, but they rarely allow themselves to be genuinely controlled. Their empathy may open the door to compassion, but their intuition is the silent shield that protects them from exploitation. Also, INFJs are often painted as passive dreamers, too caught up in emotions and ideas to ever act decisively. Yet, many INFJs are deeply driven when they have a clear sense of purpose. They are not motivated by money, power, or status, but by meaning. When an INFJ finds a cause that aligns with their values, they can be relentless, channeling their creativity, insight, and work ethic into tangible results. Their ambition just doesn't always look like the typical ladder-climbing kind. It's quieter, more purposeful, and deeply tied to something greater than themselves. Many also assume that because INFJs are good listeners and avoid unnecessary conflict, they agree with everything said to them. But this is far from the truth. INFJs often keep their strongest opinions close to the chest, especially when they know the other person isn't ready to hear them. Their silence is not agreement, but discernment. They weigh when it is worth sharing their perspective, and when it is wiser to let things pass. Those who mistake their kindness for submission are often surprised when the INFJ finally asserts themselves with unshakable clarity. Another thing people misunderstand is their solitude. Many interpret the INFJ's need for alone time as antisocial behavior or even depression. Yet, for INFJs, solitude is nourishment. It is where they sift through the emotions they have absorbed from others, where they recharge their energy, and where they reconnect with their own thoughts and visions. Without this space, they become overwhelmed and disoriented. Solitude is not loneliness for them. It is alignment. They thrive in it. And those who misinterpret it as withdrawal from the world often miss the beauty of what the INFJ is creating and processing in that silence. One of the greatest misconceptions about INFJs is that they can be fully defined by a personality label. People often cling to stereotypes, mystical counselor, quiet empath, or emotional healer, without realizing that INFJs, like anyone else, are multidimensional. They can be funny, sarcastic, fiery, adventurous, or even reckless at times. They can surprise people with how outspoken or bold they become in the right environment. They are not bound to one expression of their personality. The essence of the INFJ lies in their depth and their duality. Compassionate yet guarded, idealistic yet pragmatic, social yet solitary. To try to flatten them into a single narrative is to miss the beauty of their complexity. People also tend to misunderstand their loyalty. INFJs are deeply devoted once they commit to someone, whether in friendship, romance, or partnership. However, outsiders often mistake this loyalty for blind devotion. They assume INFJs will stay regardless of how they are treated. That couldn't be further from the truth. Their loyalty is conditional. It is based on mutual respect, trust, and integrity. They may endure challenges longer than most, but they will not chain themselves to toxicity forever. Once the balance tips into repeated betrayal or dishonor, the same INFJ who seemed endlessly loyal can walk away without looking back. Their loyalty is powerful, but it is never unconditional servitude. Another thing people frequently get wrong about INFJs is their relationship with conflict. Because they prefer harmony, people assume they fear confrontation. But avoidance is not the same as fear. INFJs often weigh the impact of their words before engaging, calculating whether the conflict will bring growth or simply unnecessary tension. When they decide that conflict is unavoidable or necessary, they can step into it with surprising boldness. They are not fragile peacekeepers who crumble under pressure. They are strategists who choose their battles wisely, preferring to conserve their energy for what truly matters. Another common misconception is that INFJs are always serious. Their depth and reflective nature often lead others to assume they lack humor or lightness. Yet, those close to INFJs know they can be playful, witty, and even mischievous. Their humor tends to be intelligent, sometimes dry or sarcastic, but it is very much present. They laugh deeply with those they trust, and their lighthearted side shines when they feel safe and understood. Outsiders who only see their thoughtful exterior miss the warmth, silliness, and laughter that lies beneath. INFJs are also often misunderstood when it comes to ambition and success. While they may not always chase traditional markers of achievement, they have an internal drive that can surpass many outwardly ambitious personalities. The difference is that their ambition isn't about competition, it's about contribution. They care less about proving themselves and more about fulfilling a vision or purpose. People sometimes mistake their lack of competitiveness for passivity, but in reality, INFJs can quietly build extraordinary careers, movements, or creative works without fanfare. Their success often surprises others because it wasn't loud or attention-seeking, but instead quietly consistent until the results spoke for themselves. Another misconception is that INFJs are people pleasers. Because they are empathetic and considerate, many think they always go along with what others want. But in truth, INFJs often make sacrifices out of choice, not weakness. They weigh what will cause the least harm, and sometimes choose the path of accommodation. However, when their values are at stake, they will stand firm in ways that shock those who thought they could be bent easily. Their seeming compliance isn't submission, it's discernment. They know which hills are worth dying on and which aren't, and they adjust accordingly. Many people also mistake INFJs' desire for deep connection as a form of dependency, believing that they always need someone to feel whole. In truth, INFJs are highly independent thinkers and can live very comfortably in solitude. While they long for intimacy and meaningful bonds, they do not need others to define their worth. They often spend long stretches of time creating, reflecting, and building their inner world without external validation. When they do seek connection, it isn't out of desperation, but out of a desire to share the fullness of who they are with someone who can truly understand. There's also the assumption that INFJs are always composed and emotionally balanced. Because they often present a calm exterior, many fail to realize the storm that can rage internally. INFJs feel deeply and often struggle with intensity that few others witness. They may wrestle with existential questions, deep loneliness, or overwhelming empathy that leaves them drained. Yet, because they shield others from this inner turbulence, people assume they are immune to struggle. This invisibility of their inner battles can be one of the most isolating aspects of being an INFJ, as others rarely see the depth of what they carry behind their steady presence. People also misinterpret the way INFJs show love. Since they're not always demonstrative in the traditional sense, outsiders may believe they're distant or emotionally detached. In truth, INFJs express love in subtle, often overlooked ways, remembering small details, anticipating needs, creating a safe space for vulnerability. They're less about grand gestures and more about quiet consistency. Many miss this because they're looking for flashy expressions, not realizing the INFJ's depth of devotion is often found in the smallest, most thoughtful acts. Another misconception lies in the way INFJs handle authority. Because they're polite and respectful, it's easy to assume they blindly follow rules or defer to those in charge. But INFJs are far from obedient followers. They respect authority only when it aligns with their internal values. If they sense corruption, injustice, or abuse of power, they can become quietly rebellious, often working behind the scenes to challenge the status quo. Their rebellion doesn't always look loud or confrontational. It's subtle, principled, and strategic. Those who mistake their courtesy for submission are often surprised to discover just how firm and unyielding an INFJ can be when principles are at stake. INFJs are also misunderstood when it comes to decision-making. People often assume that because they care about others' feelings, they struggle to make firm choices. The truth is, INFJs can be very decisive, but their decision-making process is layered. They factor in both logic and empathy, short-term consequences and long-term effects. While this may make them appear hesitant on the surface, once their decision is made, they rarely waver. They commit with quiet determination, even if others don't understand the reasoning behind it. Another area where misconceptions arise is an INFJ's relationship with material things. Because they often seem detached from consumer culture, people may assume they don't care about beauty or aesthetics. In reality, INFJs often have a refined appreciation for beauty in many forms. Art, design, music, even personal style. They just don't flaunt it or chase it for status. Instead, they curate environments that nourish their inner world, surrounding themselves with things that hold meaning, evoke emotion, or inspire creativity. Their sense of beauty is subtle but deeply intentional. People also often get it wrong when they assume INFJs are naturally confident because they can come across as wise, insightful, and composed. But internally, many INFJs wrestle with self-doubt. They question whether their visions are realistic, whether they are truly making a difference, and whether they are understood. Their confidence ebbs and flows, often hidden beneath the calm exterior they present. It isn't that they lack confidence altogether, but rather that their inner critic can be relentless. This nuance often goes unseen, leaving others to assume they are more self-assured than they actually feel. Another misconception about INFJs comes from the way they handle endings. Because they value deep bonds, people assume they will always fight to preserve a relationship, whether romantic, platonic, or professional. Yet, INFJs can accept endings more easily than people think when they recognize that something has run its course. Their intuition often signals to them when a chapter is closing, and they can release it with a kind of bittersweet acceptance. This doesn't mean they don't feel the loss deeply. They do, but they also have an inner wisdom that understands the necessity of letting go. People also frequently misjudge their ability to lead. INFJs rarely fit the stereotypical image of a loud, commanding leader, and because of this, they are often overlooked in leadership roles. Yet, they excel as vision-driven leaders who guide others with empathy, foresight, and conviction. Their leadership is subtle, rooted in inspiration rather than control, and their ability to connect deeply with individuals often makes them more effective in the long run. Those who expect leadership to look like domination often fail to recognize the quiet influence INFJs wield until they see how deeply others are moved by their guidance. People often think INFJs take failure harshly because of their perfectionist tendencies, but in reality, INFJs often see failure as part of a larger process. They analyze it deeply, learn from it, and use it as fuel to refine their approach. What hurts them more than failure itself is wasted potential. When circumstances or people prevent growth, progress, or purpose from being realized. Conversely, their successes aren't always celebrated outwardly. They internalize them, often moving quickly on to the next vision without basking in the moment. This can leave others assuming they are unappreciative of their own achievements, when in fact, their minds are simply always scanning the horizon for the next step. Another area where people misunderstand them is how INFJs deal with intimacy. On the surface, they may seem cautious, even reserved, in close relationships. Some people mistake this as disinterest or emotional unavailability. But their caution comes from depth. They don't open their hearts lightly, and when they do, it is with total sincerity. Once committed, they are among the most loyal and emotionally invested partners. The misunderstanding comes because many people are used to quick, surface-level bonds, while INFJs build connection like a slow-burning fire, steady, lasting, and deeply rooted. INFJs are also often misunderstood when it comes to spontaneity. People assume they are rigid planners because of their need for structure and foresight. However, INFJs can be surprisingly spontaneous when something resonates with their values or ignites their sense of adventure. They are not spontaneous for spontaneity's sake. Rather, they act on impulse when their intuition gives them a green light. Their spontaneity looks less like recklessness and more like a sudden, intuitive leap into something that feels right, often baffling those around them who don't understand how quickly an INFJ can pivot when a moment calls for it. If you want to truly understand yourself and unlock your full potential as an INFJ, check out the INFJ Playbook today. The link is in the description of this video.